are literally shaping the planet.
Purpose is the only pathway to a regenerative future.
We have a choice to stay with the status quo or to change.
What is the point of trying to be just resilient when we can actually innovate?
We're going to talk about some market trends in modular construction. Specifically, want to get into, just real quick, who is MBI? When we say modular construction, what are we talking about? Some of the advantages, which you may have heard in the past, but really get into the key markets and share with you some resources that you can use that are available, and many of these are free resources. But before I move to that next slide, I just like showing that visual image of what we're talking about with modular construction. That top image is a wood frame module being craned into place, and that's for a multifamily complex. I believe that one's in California. The bottom image is a steel frame module being craned into place for a healthcare facility in New York City. So just wanted to show a couple examples of the in-process work, because a lot of times we show the finished building and it looks nice and we like showing them off, but sometimes it's helpful to show those in-process images as well. So just real quick, Modular Building Institute, I've been the director since 2004. Man, so much has changed in that time. The trade association, MBI, we were founded in 1983, so we've been around for a bit. We're an international nonprofit trade association, so it's our role it's our mission to promote modular and offsite construction through innovation, construction practices, outreach and education, things like we're doing today. We have 450 member companies globally, including modular manufacturers, contractors, developers, architects, engineers, really everyone in the construction industry. What we've seen lately over these past, say, 4 or 5 years, much more interest and really membership growth from what we would historically call the traditional construction industry, GCs, owners, developers, architects, engineers. That has been our membership growth primarily over the last five years or so. So that's exciting to see. A couple quick facts, and I'm sure we'll share these slides, and we have all these resources as well. Modular construction, you see on the left, the image there, that's our annual report that our trade association puts out. If you go to modular.org, you can find those past reports. This one's on permanent modular construction. We have some other reports on relocatable buildings, and we have some for specific countries as well. But we think it's helpful when you talk about modular construction to think of a process rather than a product. And over the years, we found as we're educating code officials or owners or developers or architects, when you say modular, people often think of, they think of a trailer, or they have that mentality of a box. And we like to think of it as a construction process where you fabricate three-dimensional modules or boxes at an offsite facility, and then you transport and install those boxes at the building location. So you probably know this, but in the U.S., all modular homes and buildings are constructed to the same building codes as a conventionally or traditionally constructed building. And that's often some version of the I codes, IBC, IRC. So we're building to the same codes as, air quotes, traditional construction, conventional construction. We distinguish modular from manufactured housing, which is the federal preemptive HUD code. So that's not our trade association. That's not our industry. There's another group that does that. We're talking about modularly constructed buildings and homes. Virtually every construction project you can think of has some degree of prefabrication or offsite component, whether that's roof trusses, window systems, doors, HVAC ductwork, mechanical systems. Everything has a degree of prefabrication these days. What we're talking about is taking that really to the bigger level, and we're building the entire building, the envelope, offsite and bringing it to the site. So it's just an expansion of that offsite, how much we're doing offsite, I suppose. I'm going to hit on a few advantages. And Nick, if anyone has questions throughout, I don't mind entertaining those as we go. We can hold them till the end. No preference on my part. If someone has a relevant question and it fits one of the slides, feel free to pop that in and just interrupt me as you go. You've perhaps seen this slide. A lot of people in our industry use it, but the number one advantage of modular construction is the time savings. And the reason for that, as you can see from this little graphic, is we're able to take the building construction portion of the schedule and do that in conjunction with the site development work and the foundations, rather than a sequential schedule as the top line shows. We can schedule and move that building component construction really to any part of the schedule. So what happens is, as you have this concurrent construction schedule or overlapping schedule, you've got two work sites basically, the foundation and the site, and the building is being fabricated at an offsite location. And for those of you that have seen videos or had the opportunity to see a modular building being installed on site, once that happens, the building comes together very quickly. The construction's happened in the factory. Those boxes arrive on site. Literally within a week, you can have a 5, 6, 7-story building under roof, and you're working on the interior at that point. So it's pretty incredible. If you take a week off and you come back to a site, you'll see that the building's almost done. So that's the time savings. This really plays into what the last speakers were talking about. How does this play into affordability? And I'm going to touch on this just a bit on this slide. A lot of times when we hear affordability, we think of upfront cost. What's the cost per square foot for this building? And I'll get into that slide next. But for developers, for owners, for restaurants, for any building type that generates revenue, this time savings generates additional cash flow. It generates it earlier. So, Marriott is one of our members, and they've been kind of all in on modular these last 4 or 5 years. What they have told us is on a typical modular hotel project, they save anywhere from 3 to 8 months on their schedule. And for their franchisees, that's 8 months of revenue that they would not have had with a site-built project. So when you do your 10-year pro forma and you look at a site-built multifamily development or a hotel or whatever it is, and you have zeros in those first few years of revenue for a site-built project, and you could start putting revenue numbers in that second year of your modular project, that changes the cash flow entirely. Your return on investment looks better. These things tend to pencil out a little better. So the time savings really factors into the cash flow generation. So I just wanted to touch on that as we're talking about affordability. We almost always get asked as the trade association, is modular cheaper? Is it cheaper than site built? And seems to be an expectation that it is or that it should be. And we've always answered somewhat politically that it depends. As you know, any project you work on, there are a ton of variables that impact the cost, the labor, availability, the location. Any number of things can impact the cost of a project. So we tend to dance around that one a little bit and say, well, it's comparable to site built. You're going to benefit from the time savings. But this past year, we worked with Dodge Data and Analytics on this survey they put out. And it's prefabrication and modular construction. It's their 2020 Smart Market Report. That's available on our site. That's available on their site. That's a free one. But basically, they went out and surveyed different segments of the construction industry: architects, engineers, GCs, owners, subcontractors, and asked them a series of questions about modular construction. And lo and behold, this screen you're looking at now shows that 91% of the GCs that use modular construction reported a cost savings in doing so. And if you look at that middle bar, 91% is huge, but 48% of those said the budget decreased by more than 10%. That's huge when you start talking about affordable housing projects. Architects and engineers, a little less impact. 47% said the project budget decreased. The trades 46%. But these are actual experienced GCs that used modular, and this is what they reported back to Dodge on their average cost savings on these projects. So 91% say, yes, there is a cost savings. Again, I'm always a little cautious to say it's cheaper because a lot of that's going to depend on labor availability and just the general market conditions, supply and demand. Nonetheless, Dodge report says, yes, there's some cost savings. I'm going to hit on a few more from this report because I think this is important, and we frankly don't talk about this enough. And this is the environmental impact our construction industry is having, just how bad we are as an industry in terms of waste that's going to the landfills. Again, I'm sure you've seen the studies and research, but this particular question asked about the amount of waste reduced by using modular construction, less waste going to the landfill. 203 respondents answered this, and you can see very high, medium. 90% of all the respondents said there is a significant waste reduction when using modular construction. And if you think about that and you picture a typical construction project, you almost always have this image of dumpster after dumpster after dumpster on the site that's full of 2x4 and drywall pieces, and all that's going to the landfill. At some point, we have got to address that. I mean, it's just not an infinite landfill out there. So we've got to start doing better at reducing waste in construction. On a modular project, that material gets delivered to a factory. That factory can buy in bulk. They can use material for multiple projects. The typical site-built project, if that material is not used on that site after it's delivered to that site, it's probably going to the landfill. They're not going to save a small piece of 2x4 for the next project. In a factory, you can do those things. So there's a much less waste generated from modular construction. And while I'm on that slide, I would just say that sounds intuitively right. That makes sense, but we went a little step further, and we've actually commissioned two studies over in my time here, past 10 years. One was from the University of Virginia School of Architecture, and that was probably a decade ago. And we asked, what is the environmental impact? What is the carbon footprint of a modular project versus a site-built project? And 10 years ago, that was a challenge to find comparable projects to measure and to get that data. Nonetheless, they did, and they found that there was about a 10% lower carbon footprint, all things considered, for a modular project. They even looked at the modular facility itself, the factory, the energy use that goes into it, the vehicles driving to the factory versus to the site. So all in is about 10% lower impact. That was good, but we felt it should have been higher. We had University of Alberta School of Engineering take a look at the same question, and this one's about 4 or 5 years ago. And they dug in a little deeper, had some very smart grad students look at this. Their research showed that there was about a 45% lower impact in terms of carbon footprint for a typical modular project compared to a site built. So that research is available on our website under the resources section, and I'll share a few more resources with you in a moment. But again, we think that's an important factor, benefit of modular construction that doesn't get brought up enough. Oftentimes, environmental impact is not what's driving owners, developers, but we think it needs to be more of a consideration. Likewise with worker safety. And maybe because of COVID, this has moved to the forefront for a lot of people, but modular construction has always been a safer work environment than the traditional construction site. Again, if you think about it, in our factories, we're building the first floor of a building on the factory floor. We're building the 10th floor of a building on the factory floor. You almost eliminate fall risks, which is one of the leading causes of injuries among construction workers. So you virtually eliminate fall hazards. By moving that to a controlled factory setting versus someone working outside, hanging off the side of a building, scaffolding, you've kind of eliminated a lot of those high risk construction areas such as falls and scaffolding. But that's taking our word for it. So Dodge posed that question. And again, 203 respondents. And you can see the numbers. It's dramatic in terms of the impact on overall safety for their workers. This screen alone should be enough reason for people to consider modular construction. The 2020, the year we're having, if we're not thinking about safety and workers and our workforce and how do we keep our families and our workers safe, this should highlight it. And this, by the way, was done pre-COVID. So this is all probably even highlighted more now. So this worker safety one is something that, again, our industry is going to push a little more, but we think it ought to be a stronger consideration for owners and developers. A lot of other advantages, but we're going to move into some other areas. Each year, our organization surveys all of our membership. We have about 80 modular manufacturers in North America. We survey them. We ask them questions like, what are the markets you're building for? What's the total square footage? What's your gross revenue? Pull all that information together to create some industry averages and market analysis. And we put that in our annual reports. And this screen I'm showing you here is the key markets that our modular manufacturers built for in 2019. And I'll say this, there is a similar organization that I also happen to run called the Modular Home Builders Association. That's a single family trade association. Modular Building Institute is multifamily and commercial markets. So we're not including residential under the Modular Building Institute banner here, but modular homes constitute about 4% of the overall housing starts in the U.S. So separated that from this conversation, we're talking more about these markets, and you can see from the list, educational facilities is about a fourth of all the industry production for 2019. Modular school additions, complexes, but really we've got member companies that are building entire schools and campuses. And you may hear from some of them a little bit later today. Office and administrative space, that still is the largest market in the US anyway. And that can be, just any type of office facility, doctor's offices, things like that. These next two I highlighted, they're relatively low in terms of production in 2019, but they are the fastest growing markets for reasons, for obvious reasons, including what the last panel talked about. Multifamily is about 7% of our industry's production in 2019, but that number doubled in the prior year. So from 2018 to 2019, multifamily production doubled. So that's our fastest growing market in our industry. Healthcare, 5%. We flagged that one intentionally because 2020 with the what we saw from COVID is that, let's just put it like it is, our country is woefully unprepared in terms of healthcare infrastructure needs as well as housing needs. So those two areas we know are going to need to be addressed at a much greater level, housing and healthcare facilities. So we've highlighted both of those as projected to be our fastest growing markets for the next 5 years. The hotel hospitality sector, mentioned Marriott earlier. There are any number of brands that are using modular construction now. That was about 5% of our production in 2019. Obviously, due to COVID and what's happened to the hospitality industry, we don't expect 2020 to be a banner year in that market. So that production will probably shift into that multifamily or healthcare markets for 2020 at least. Hopefully that'll come back. Those large brands had numerous hotels in the pipeline and in the works, so I'd like to see those going again. Institutional and assembly, about 3%, and there we're talking about prisons, police stations, fire departments, things like that. Not a huge market, but nonetheless, 3% of what our members built in the prior year. And then, lastly, retail at 1%. And that one always surprises me, particularly with quick serve restaurants, which is an ideal market for modular construction. If you're a franchisee and you want to build 10 Taco Bells, why not build them all out of one factory so you have the quality and consistency and of the workforce instead of trying to find 10 different contractors and local laborers. I'm shocked that retail isn't higher, but I still hold out promise. I'm an eternal optimist on the modular construction industry. Wouldn't have been able to do this for 16 years if I didn't think this was going to be absolutely the way people are going to be building for the next 20 years. Just real quick on this key markets, about 6 years ago now, I guess, our board of directors looked at the data looked at it pretty hard and realized we kept saying we're about 2.5%, 3% of all new construction starts. And we said, what are we? Let's dig into this and find it out. And it turns out we were right around 2.5%. And we embarked on a 5-year plan to say we want to double that market share in the next 5 years. So what do we have to do to make that happen? And we hired very smart people, Professor Ryan Smith and Ivan Rupnick, who do a lot of research in this field, to say, what are the barriers? Go around the country, go around the world and tell us, why is modular catching on in the UK and Japan and China and Australia and not so much here? And tell us what's happening. And they came back with some great findings, which we used and incorporated and built that into our report, which is also a free one you can get on our website. But a lot of it had to do with a lack of standards in our industry and in North America in particular. Everyone wants a custom project. All of our manufacturers tend to be regional in nature. So you end up with designing a new building each time, which frankly isn't ideal for a manufacturing-based industry. I think your last speaker from Katera addressed this. It's, we need to move more towards a manufacturing type construction process. And right now, I think we're hovering between, we're offsite construction is what we are. We've moved the construction site to a factory, and now we're doing some automation, but largely it's construction activity at an offsite location. So when we can move more towards a manufacturing process, more standards, it's going to help everybody. It's going to help the industry grow. It's going to help address housing. It's going to help address the massive labor shortage that we currently have that's going to get worse in the next 5 years. We looked at the data, the projections. We all have heard about the labor shortages in the construction industry. It's not getting better. It will get worse in the next 5 years. So when you start looking at labor shortages getting even tighter, housing needs that are not being met, healthcare facilities that are not being met, educational facilities that need massive amounts of investment in it, our infrastructure needs are high, our labor availability is low. We've created this perfect storm for what we've been doing is not going to work for the next 5 years. It's just not. Now, I'm, again, a little biased. I'm the spokesperson for the industry, but stepping back from this, looking at it, I'd have to say, boy, the facts are all there. We can't keep building the way we've been building, over budget, over schedule, not even putting a dent in the demand. We've got to automate and streamline some of these processes. And that's where I think modular can come in. And by no means am I saying the modular construction industry is the silver bullet or we're the answer to all your problems, but we should be more than 3% of the construction starts. We need to be 10, 15, 20% of this to start putting a dent in some of these infrastructure needs. So that's my little soapbox. I wanted to share with you a few resources that are out there. All three of these are available on modular.org, which is our website. What we realized in doing our market share analysis, and by the way, we didn't quite double it. We didn't quite get to 5%. I think we landed at like 4.2%, but nearly doubled the market share in 5 years. But what we realized was that everything about construction, and I mean everything from procurement to financing to the building codes, contracts, everything was written for a site-built world. So we have literally just started compartmentalizing and said, all right, let's address the financing piece. We worked with Fannie Mae through our relationship with the Offsite Construction Council, which is a council under the National Institute of Building Science. Worked with Fannie Mae, and they just recently published this toolkit for their lender network, multifamily modular construction toolkit. So they took all of our information, we put it together in a toolkit. They've sent this out to their lending community to say, here's some best practices if you want to finance a project that's modular. That should be a big help, because that was if you can't get the financing for a project, the project's not going to go. So that's out there on our resources page. I mentioned the Dodge Data and Analytics Smart Market Report, a ton of great information in that report. Download it for free on our site. The bottom one is our industry annual report, and I'll put this little caveat out there. That's a freebie for our members. If you're not a member, it's available for sale. You can get the prior year version free, but the current year you either pay for it or you join. So that's my little hook to get you to join our organization. We are a membership-based organization, so you can join. We, doing this event digitally, we had our annual conference called World of Modular back in March. That was the last in-person event we've had. It was a great show. We wrapped on, I think it was Friday, the 13th. And by the following Monday, everything shut down. No conferences, no in-person meetings, and it's been that way. And I had no idea we'd still be doing virtual conferences in September. Nonetheless, that's where we are. So we've scheduled some regional events ourselves, and we've been doing these. This is probably the 10th or 12th event we've done. We used to do them in person, but now they've moved to digital events. We just did one for the Denver region this week, or last week, I'm sorry. Great event. We had over 110 participants on it, exhibitors. We had 6 presentations, mostly on multifamily. We've got these 2 events coming up, Toronto and DC. This is a quick, easy way to get a crash course in offsite construction for those that are interested. We've got 6 presentations. We have all the regional exhibitors in this space that'll have digital expo booths. So check it out at offsiteconstructionexpo.com or email us if you have any questions on that, which I think I'm getting close to my 30-minute mark. And I do see that we have some questions there. So Nick, I'll pause there. And
you timed it well. We got started a few minutes late, so no worries.
Okay.
Let me tee up some questions. So I think we have time for 2.
Okay.
So Michael asked, can the efficiency gains we've seen in the manufacturing industry be realized when building at the plant/offsite?
Yes, they can. What we're finding is that the modular construction industry and modular manufacturers, they all seem to do things a little bit differently, whether they have an assembly line set up in one way or a different number of stations. There's no real standard way to build in a factory. And those are some of the things we're looking at. We want our members to embrace manufacturing techniques, lean manufacturing, just in time, more so than they are now. In Japan, their modular home industry learned from their auto industry. So it's a highly automated process, manufacturer-centric. In the US, the modular industry grew out of the construction industry. So we still have a lot of construction DNA in us. In parts of Asia, it grew out of the manufacturing side of the industry. So that's what we're kind of wrestling with. We have a bit of an identity crisis. Are we construction? Are we manufacturing? We're a little of both. But I think we need to move more towards manufacturing to realize some of these efficiencies that even your past speakers talked about.
So this is a good question. So Sarah asked, one of the big hurdles to greater adoption of modular technologies has been that many development sites are not modular friendly. For an example, they're irregularly shaped or there's some similar constraint preventing development sites from being accommodative. Are there any advancements in the industry that are addressing that or making modular more flexible in that respect?
Great question. I would say this, that we have put modular buildings in some of the most crazy places, inaccessible places you'd think in the world. A lot of urban infill projects. Sometimes these tight urban areas are better for modular because you don't have a construction site happening in downtown New York City. That's happening off-site, and you only need to block that site for a couple of maybe a week to get all the modules there and the staging. So there's some advantages to some of those tight spots that I think she's speaking about. Really, if you think of modular, it doesn't have to be a cookie cutter size or shape. That's really the modular manufacturer, the owner, the architect working together to say, here's this site. Let's decide up front if this is going to go modular or not. And if it is, let's talk about the design and the size of the modules and et cetera. That's the key to any successful modular project. Early communication, early decision making, get everyone on the same page with your manufacturer, lock that in, and then hit the go button.
That's great. Appreciate the answer, Tom. That was outstanding. Thank you for spending time with us and sharing more about the modular space. I think I for one certainly respect how long you've been committed to it. It's not easy to stare, an industry that is resistant to adopting new technologies and even a significant amount of change to processes. I understand how difficult that can be. So kudos to you for sticking with it. And it looks like things are kind of turning your way.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty stubborn, and it's changed dramatically in the time I've been in this seat. I just think it's inevitable. The construction industry is kind of that holdout as far as evolution goes. It's going to happen. It has to happen. Mm-hmm. Everything we've laid out and the past speakers have laid out, there is no other option to build everything that needs to be built unless we automate and move towards more of this type of process. So I appreciate you having me on today, Nick, and sharing our gospel.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Tom.
Okay. Thanks, Nick.